Let's go.
Let's go. Let's
Yeah,
do
we're doing it. Mate, enjoy. It's bad luck to kind of say cheers with coffee.
Okay.
Because you do that in funerals in Greece. So you don't do that.
What do you say instead?
You just drink your coffee and just say
Fair
anything.
enough.
Just sit there in noble silence. I thought I'd have my most good-looking friend on my first video podcast.
You're too nice. You're too nice.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. Fuck yeah. Look how far we came.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
You said before you've done this for about a year or so.
And the first one that we did was with like audio, right? It was during the first lockdown where people were like proper serious.
Yeah.
I'm not saying this is not serious, right? But you're in my bubble. I've got a bubble of people. But yeah, man. Okay, one thing I wanted to talk to you about was your you were hospitalized for. What was the reason? Was it not appendicitis?
Yeah. So it was about a month ago now. Haven't had any issues like that at all before, and started on Friday. Felt good that morning. Came back after some exercise and started to have like a pain in my stomach, just kind of low level pain. I thought I'd rest the rest of the day, see what would happen, and then kind of got progressively worse, and the pain started to go just in the lower right part of my abdomen. And obviously, like everyone else, like I did a Google search trying to sort of like pretend I was a doctor, pretend I was a doctor, see what I could figure out, and it got a little bit better that evening because I thought, okay, maybe it's just like a stomach bug, ate something bad, who knows. And then that evening, just the pain was just increased, and didn't really get any sleep, and I woke up about 6 o'clock that morning, tried to go for a walk, and I must look so funny when watch me because when you have appendicitis, it's very hard to walk.
What do you do? Slouch?
Just
over?
like slouch over. It's just because obviously just the pain's just like becoming unbearable. You're just walking really slow. I was walking really slow down the street, just trying to think what to do, and then I just called 111, asked for the help because I didn't want to put like extra in NHS and just go in there when I didn't need to. And they were like, "Yeah, you probably got appendicitis." So I went that day, and luckily all the hospital staff were great, and luckily I didn't need surgery. It was just basically my appendix was inflamed, but it wasn't ruptured. If it was ruptured, then it would be a lot more serious. Obviously, all the bacteria I think in your appendix would have started to go all around the rest of your body. So luckily, didn't have that. And they offered me either a week of antibiotics or surgery and antibiotics. But they said because of my age, because of my health, it wasn't necessarily that I needed surgery. So I just had antibiotics out within a day. And then took about a week, 2 weeks to kind of get back to recovery.
And what was, because you said that it was like possibly parasitic?
Yeah, it's one of those things I'm not an expert in it, but from what I've researched and what I spoke to the doctors about, there's kind of 3 main areas it could be. One is that a part of your stool went down the wrong way and got blocked where your appendix is, and then kind of basically called a blockage and then increased inflammation there. But they did like a CT scan, it wasn't that. The other third it could be is they're not sure. It could be just undiagnosed, they're not really sure. And then the other third, it was like a parasite or infection.
That's scary.
Yeah, and they obviously said it could be from anything. It could be from animal products, it could be from vegetables, it could be from me coming in contact with something.
Jiu-jitsu mats.
Yeah, anything like that. So they're not really... It was one of those things like, okay, what can I do in the future to reduce the likelihood of it happening again? They didn't really have that much of an answer. So yeah, I feel good now, but it's definitely woken me up to more things to do with health. And the weirdest thing was those 2 weeks, I was learning a lot about gut health on my health coach course that week. So when I was in hospital, they said, yeah, you need antibiotics. Like, okay, now I need to get some probiotic supplements to really help kind of fuel the good bacteria. So I was on my hospital bed, just like, got on Amazon, just like buying some like probiotics.
What did you buy?
The ones I've got is, there's like, part of probiotics is the fermented foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, miso, natto, live yogurt, things like that. And then you can also get supplements as well, which you'd have more if you had something like I had with antibiotics or kind of really severe issue with your gut. So I just basically did everything I could the next few weeks, just like took supplements, a lot of fermented food, and then just eating really, really clean because I didn't want to kind of fuel the bad bacteria with lots of like refined carbs, sugar, things like that. So that's kind of the main thing. And then just try and have a restful period, not increase my stress much. But yeah, it was a bit scary because I never really had that. I had one surgery beforehand, but it's just from going from complete healthy to just sort of basically like a cripple and just couldn't move at all in like kind of a space of 6 hours. It was pretty.
How did that make you feel? Like,
I think it was when I was in the hospital bed and just everyone around me. I was in a ward, lots of elderly people, and a lot of them had. I'm not sure exactly what they had, some kind of mental health issues because they were just speaking to themselves or just throughout. Because I stayed there one night and just throughout the night they were, shouting random things and it was pretty like scary just being that. I opposite from a guy who's probably 90 years old who just looks so haggard and so ill.
Did you talk to any of them?
Like a little bit, but everyone, and that was the weird thing with like phones, like everyone was on their phones most of the time.
Even the old people were on their phones.
He had a book, but most of the people, like, it was such a thing, like doctors came in, everyone was on their phone, everyone's their own little world, watching their TV and things like that. And the food, I think I spoke to you before about the food was really interesting because I never really had hospital food beforehand. I knew it's not going to be amazing, but there was options in breakfast if I wanted to have like really sugary cereal, like chocolate croissants, hot chocolate. I could have added sugar with it. And also I didn't choose that. The best thing I could see on the menu was just like fruits and porridge. Yeah. Lemon and ginger tea. But just the fact they give you the option, and then all kind of the vending machines in there are like Coke bottles. Really healthy snacks. There was only maybe one thing that was like a handful, like mixed nuts. That was the one thing I maybe would have chose. Apart from that, it was like Fanta bottles and just really, and you think, and some doctors weren't embarrassed about it. They were like, listen, if you want to get your mates to bring your own food, that's fine. So even some of them understood to some effect, but it's just it's hard to know how to change it. It's like a whole system of like, where the main food industry have got their kind of hooks into the hospitals and things.
Well, I think it's like government have sold a contract to a certain food manufacturer. I think that's probably how it works. But it's very fascinating to see that the choices on offer and to consider how people might go into hospital with COVID and get onto these sugary foods because they have to eat something. And then I mean, obviously they're going to get worse. Obviously they might die. Obviously they might have longer COVID. Because I don't know, this is nothing that we talked about, but we don't put two and two together when it comes to nutrition and health. We think that health is just an unfortunate roll of the dice. Like, oh, you develop cancer. It's just so unlucky that you develop cancer. Like, and then you're smoking cigarettes and just eating burgers and stuff like that, and not sleeping properly, and you're really stressed. You're never exercising. It's like, of course you're gonna get sick. There's no avoiding that. It's not just like an act of God. Yeah. And I think that you could argue that perspective blames the victim of someone of poor health, and perhaps, but it's also a very empowering one because you know that you have everything within your power to make your health to fortify it, right?
100%.
Yeah. I like what you say as well, that health is a practice. It's not something that you do once. Like, you have kale and it's like, I can retire from my health journey now. Yeah. Like, if you don't practice it, you're not going to have it. So it's just a constant thing that you have to keep topping up.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I mentioned before, like on the last episode that we did together about free medicine, and just there are so many things you can do which are free, whether it's like walking outside, movement, fasting. Sleep is free. Sleep is one of the main things that you can do to help improve your overall health. But as you said, it's quite nice to be able to think you can have ownership over your own body. Yeah. And there's things you can do day by day to make it, to kind of just like use health as a vehicle for something else. Yeah. So through having good health, you've got good energy or good relationships and things like that, and just really help to kind of change the way you view the world. So
it's true. I mean, it impacts everything else in your life, because if you have like donuts and a cup of coffee for breakfast, you're going to feel groggy for the rest of the day. You're more likely to snap at your loved ones. You're more likely to not have energy to exercise, and that creates a self-fulfilling prophecy or like a vicious cycle, right? But it's interesting, when I had COVID, I knew that I couldn't leave this room for like the 10 days that I had it. So I made sure that I would just focus on kind of sleep and eating. I still have my appetite, which I was very grateful for because it gave me something to do. So like cooking, and I just made really clean, as close to alkaline as possible. Like, I think I didn't have bread for the first like 5 or 6 days, which is my only like acidic thing that I have. I don't normally have coffee and stuff, but and within 3 days, the main symptoms kind of subsided. And on the 4th day, I was like swinging my kettlebell and like getting crazy in here, like looking out the window.
Waiting, shaking on the windows.
Yeah,
like,
let me out. I want to grapple. But the thing is, like, I know people that have had COVID and I know what their diets are like and they're still suffering. Their cardio is still not back and they've had it for, I don't know, they had it 2 months ago and their cardio is still not to the place where it was. And I see a direct correlation between the food that they put into their body and the habits that they have, and the fact that they haven't recovered properly.
Yeah, definitely. It's just so important to sort of think about it. And I think me going to hospital really kind of made the fact that when I'm not healthy, when I'm sick, that's all I think about. That's all I can do. Like when I was in pain from appendicitis, I couldn't do anything else. Couldn't see loved ones, couldn't work, or couldn't have made money, or whatever it was. So it's kind of thinking about, hopefully COVID has helped a lot of people, hopefully in some way, become aware that you need to kind of think about your health now when you're healthy, not when you're sick, because that's when it's much harder to do. And if you are, let's say, overweight or have certain other issues, it's going to take a while for you to lose that weight, for example. It's not going to happen overnight. And I guess that can derail a lot of people thinking, I'm going to start this, do this New Year's resolution. And it takes a long time to kind of like lose weight or gain weight or change any of the habits. I don't know if you heard of a guy called, I think his name is BJ Fogg. He's like a professor of human behavior.
I've not heard
researcher
of him.
I think at Stanford University. He's got a few really good podcasts and books about kind of habit change that I'm really trying to implement like in my own life and with health coaching in general. And he says start really small, start with tiny habits. So he used the example of either, let's say you want to floss your teeth. Rather than say, Alex, you have to do it every single day, floss your whole teeth, top and bottom. He says start with one tooth a night, just like one tooth a night, that's it.
That's crazy.
With really small habits. So start with something really small that you're going to be able to do.
Yeah.
And then second, tie it onto an existing habit. So for flossing your teeth, it's brushing your teeth. So you always kind of click to, okay, brushing my teeth, then floss it. Because it's hard to remember a new habit if it's just a random thing that happens during the day. And then because it's such a small level, small bar, you're going to be able to do it, then celebrate those wins and then like about emotions and kind of create the feelings of happiness when you succeed in flossing that one tooth. And most of the time you're going to be like, I'm not going to just floss one. Yeah, I'm going to do more and keep on going.
Yeah.
Same with like push-ups, or if you're doing a workout. Like recently I helped my dad just move a bit more and increase some strength training. And I was like, just do a 5-minute workout twice a week. That's all I'm asking. I kind of showed him various bodyweight exercises, any equipment or gym to do. And then most times he increases that or does a bit more, because it's once you get the endorphins running, then you want to increase it. But I think it's better to start off really small and then build up. And eventually you could get to an hour workout and do these things. But for a lot of people, especially they're quite sedentary, it's like going to the gym for 3 times a week for an hour. They're going to be motivated at the start, but like realistically, that's a hard habit to change.
Yeah.
So I've only recently got into his work, but I really like it. Just starting really small, and then you see it build up over time. And you'll be able to kind of have success for those wins and keep on going forward.
It makes a lot of sense. I have a type of personality where I'm all or nothing. So if I'm going to do jiu-jitsu, I'm going to do it 12 times a week. And then, so like when I started flossing, I mean, I don't think flossing is that big of a like commitment.
Just one example, yeah.
But yeah. But what's interesting is was your dad sedentary before you?
No, the issue was he had surgery on his knee. So there's a lot of movements, kind of a lot of squatty movements he couldn't do, and most of the exercise he did before COVID was swimming. He loves to swim, but with COVID he can't do that. And cycling, he loved to cycle, but because of his knee, he couldn't really do that much. So most of his movements he was taken away, and he's like an osteopath, so he understands that movement and exercise, things like that.
I saw a picture of him actually. You posted a picture of him on your Facebook.
Yeah, he had a strong moustache.
Yeah, but he looks so much like you, man.
It's weird. Like
it was you with a mustache, basically.
Yeah.
In the 70s,
yeah,
like bell bottoms.
I have rocked a moustache before, but maybe I'll bring that back.
I think you should.
Yeah. It's a good look.
I think there's a time and a place for it.
So yeah, he basically hadn't. I think a lot of people, maybe that generation, did a lot of like aerobic sports, a lot of like like the classic like juggling,
juggling,
not juggling, jogging. That's the right word. Juggling is a hard thing. I'm trying to learn at the moment. That's
Are you?
Why. Yeah.
Nice. How many balls can you juggle at once?
Just 3,
okay.
And I can do it for about I want to say 10 seconds.
Okay.
So it's taken a long while because I'm terrible at any like kind of ball games. But that's what I just kind of do.
What's the technique? You throw one in, pass it to the other hand, and throw that one up. And then catch.
I guess as what I was saying before, you just start really small. I start with one tennis ball. And I did it kind of standing next to my bed, so when it kind of falls, then you can easily pick it up. But when I was in the last lockdown, I got a lot of complaints from my neighbours underneath me, because they came upstairs once and said, like, have you got a dog, or like what's happening? Because they kept on hearing the tennis balls drop on the floor, so I was so terrible, and they obviously thought I had some kind of dog, and I was playing with the dog and like kind of doing ball games and stuff. So I had to kind of politely tell her that we haven't got a dog. I'm just learning to juggle. I'm not very good yet, but
what was her reaction?
Just shock. Just not very happy.
Did she laugh? She wasn't.
Yeah,
happy?
she was quite like an old lady. I think she was quite serious. And didn't really like my humour. So, but yeah, juggling. I think everyone should do that. But jogging, that's what my dad did a lot of. And he never did any kind of strength-based stuff.
Yeah.
I think more recently, just how your muscle mass decreases after the age of 30.
Yeah. Is that what 30 you start to?
By the age of 30, you start to decrease it like a small amount, and it kind of gets progressively worse as you age. So it's things like strength building exercise is so important, especially when you get older, that a lot of people might get injured when they fall over. So like balance is a really kind of important thing, like stability. And so just doing basic stuff with my dad, like kind of just some like press ups, just some like other body weight kind of rows and things like that. He really enjoys it, and it's just like I said, 5 minutes. So
nice. But he's not living close to you, is he?
No, I did it over Zoom. Yeah, he's living in Essex. So
okay, whereabouts in Essex?
He is living near Colchester.
Oh, in Wolvenhoe, right?
The village is called Coggeshall.
Okay.
A small little village, but they grew up in like Watford with me, so they only moved out there like a year ago.
Nice.
But yeah,
because I went to uni in Colchester.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was quite nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah, nice part of the world, man. Yeah. How did you feel like? So this is the idea that I have. Like we're brought into this world completely vulnerable, right? And we rely on other people for everything. Yeah. Yet when we mature and we grow up, we develop this sense of individuality, and we think that we're completely independent of the world, or the illusion seems so. So you think that you don't need anyone else. Like I have these moments where I'm like, fuck, people just get in my way. I just want to do everything myself.
Yeah.
And then you get into a situation where, for example, I had COVID and I couldn't leave my house, and I had to rely on people to do my shopping and stuff like that. How did you feel being in that situation? Did you feel, because for me it was kind of like panic provoking, because my sense of individuality was stripped from me. But at the same time, I had this memory of a man who, my dad, he was a friend of my dad's, right?
Yeah.
And he died only about a month ago. It's quite recently, but a year and a half before his death, he had a big stroke, and it left him kind of bedbound. And I went to visit him. I hadn't seen him since he had his stroke, so I remember him just being like a normal old man that would just sit around, and he was like a gossip. He was always poking fun. He was a very funny character. And then when I went to see him, he was lying in a bed, like on his back, and he had a diaper on, and it was like he was like an 80-year-old baby, completely helpless. And in a way, I kind of thought it was beautiful, because I think he was suffering because he still wanted to be, like, he was attached to being an adult, right? He was attached to being able to do this and do that. Yeah. And he was suffering because of that. But I think there is some kind of strange beauty in that you go out of the world the way you came in, and it makes you reappreciate the fact that the universe is always there to just kind of like comfort you, like to cushion your fall wherever you go, right? Because it's like you think to yourself, like, man, if I lost a leg and I couldn't work, like, I'd be fucked. And then it's like, no, like, everything comes together, and then here you are, you're like caught. But yeah,
I like that idea. Or even just the universe sometimes just giving you like a slap in the face.
Yeah.
Just realizing that, you need the help of other people. You can't succeed at what you want to do just by yourself. You can probably go a long way, but you need the support of friends and family and other people in your life. And yeah, it is quite like a mind fuck thinking of, I guess for me anyway, like when I was growing up, I had so much support and love from my parents. And then there come a time when it'll be like role reverse, and they'll be really old and elderly, and they'll need my help more and more. I think for a lot of people, when you realize that your parents are just kind of other humans, and they're good and bad like you, and they're not these like kind of perfect people. I think that can help to kind of change your, I guess, ideas on life and things. But
do you remember a moment where you realized that your parents were not, I guess, adults in the sense that they can protect you from the whole world and have answers to everything in the world?
Yeah, I guess for me it was like when I had my first time when I was really away from parents for like 6 months or longer. I just kind of went at university and just had to, just learn for myself and fend for myself. And just coming home and seeing them, they made mistakes or they went arguments and things like that, and just realizing that they're the same as me.
Yeah.
And they're just like, 20, 30 years ahead of me. And also, I think when I was spoken to their friends about like what they were like when they were like younger, I think that's really interesting. To seeing like, they had previous boyfriends, previous girlfriends, and other things in life. So it's interesting hearing, I guess, more for me about my parents' like backstory and kind of just what happened to them and where were they at my age and things like that.
Wow.
But yeah, it is strange thinking that one day you're going to be really old and having to, maybe like, have help, needing to pee or whatever it is. And
it's just funny that we always tend to think of our perspective as fixed at any one time, but it always changes. So like, for example, we had the example of when you come into the world as a baby and you're entirely dependent, then you slowly develop a sense of individuality, you get to being an adult, then you start to looking after your parents on the way out of life, and then your children are going to look after you. And it's like at any one moment your role will change in life. I just find that interesting. But I remember Ramdas was talking about looking after his dying father, and he was saying that his father was really embarrassed by the fact that Ramdas was like cleaning him and doing all these things for him because he was still identifying with the father, right? But it's just interesting because identity is entirely not fixed. And another interesting thing is Carl Jung was talking about how in order for a man to truly attain individuality or manhood, there has to be a death of the father, whether that's like physical or kind of metaphorical, and it's the point where you realize that your father can no longer provide answers that you can't yourself go out and attain. And I guess that's when you realize that your parents are just people rather than a father. You know what I mean? Yeah.
You felt in your own life now that's come about.
Oh yeah, big time.
Change, yeah.
But I've kind of gone the other way because like my father, I really like. I drank the Kool-Aid of my dad, right? I thought he was like. I was like, wow, he knows everything. He's so smart, and and he played on that because I guess my dad's quite insecure and everything, and he wanted me to believe that he was like this like divine fucking all-knowing authority, right? Which in some sense he is when you're at a certain age.
Yeah, definitely.
But I don't think you should, like the way he did it, he would kind of make it seem like there is no other authority other than him, and I would never be able to like even think to the point where he is, you know what I mean? So it's kind of interesting now. I kind of take everything that he says with so much cynicism, which is not even, I need to find a middle ground basically. Yeah. And it's because like from a very young age I was aware that I had to I'd had to inherit the kingdom of my dad, because my dad essentially built a kingdom through his business and built a family around that, and nothing was more important than the kingdom. And I had the role of being like the prince, the person who is in line for the throne and is going to inherit these businesses and all this legacy, and it's a lot of pressure. And I thought, this is just what I have to do, you know what I mean? And then I realized that when I wanted to do something for myself, my dad actually didn't support me in that, because he saw it as a potential disillusionment of his kingdom, which to him was a threat to his overall existence. Yeah. But he didn't consider the fact that if I took over his idea of what I should be, I would be sacrificing what I wanted to be, right? But he didn't really mind, and that's what I'm kind of like grappling with at the moment. It's like the fact that I guess there's a resentment because I knew that my dad would be happy with me being unhappy, living the life that he wanted for me. And I feel resentment, but I need to just work that out. It's just hard because you can't be around that person. You kind of need to be around to kind of do all that kind of work. Even like when I ring him, I just get so mad for no reason. Like, because he's so funny. Like, he'll pick up the phone and he'll have it like, he'll be like, I'll be FaceTiming him and all I can see is like this. Yeah. Because he's like holding it there to see me. I'm like, Dad, take the phone away from your face, for fuck's sake. But yeah, it's very interesting, man. It's very interesting.
I like you've done a lot of thinking about that. yeah, and it's weird when I see my family, like a lot of people at like Christmas, whatever it is, I do feel sometimes revert back to how I was when I was a teenager or 13 years old.
Yeah.
And things that I wouldn't usually do, or like now, I just sort of, it comes automatically because I'm around my parents, around my brother, and just.
What things, like having tantrums or something?
Yeah, just more.
This is unfair.
Yeah, it's more easy to like argue with people, or just not in like a really mean way, but just be more like childish. Or I feel the same sometimes with maybe some really old friends that I've known since I was like 12, 13. Sometimes I can kind of revert back to like how I was at school, or just kind of, I guess you're a different person in different groups of people. Like how I am maybe with some friends who I work now at the yoga studio is different to how I was with the kind of people at school, just because I was a different time in my life. But yeah,
it's interesting because it's like, am I that person who was in high school, or am I that person at the yoga studio? Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I don't know who said it, but I think it's just the one thing that everyone knows about life is always going to be change, and I think you just can try it. You have to just think that you have to be in the present moment and just think that I am who I am now and who I was beforehand. You're not who you are a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I think that can be quite affirming, that you can change who you are. And even if I made a mistake, I make low mistakes like last week, whatever it is, then I don't have to be that person. I can change and not make that mistake again. So I think it's always good to think that you aren't, even though there are good and bad things that happened in the past, you are who you are now, and not kind of what you were before.
It's funny, again, Ramdas, right?
Love him. Love Ramdas.
Did you read the book, right?
You gave it to me.
Did you get through it?
Yeah, I read the whole thing. I loved it because when I was on the tube, everyone else, people were like, what the fuck is he reading? Like that spell book, all these kind of things.
Black magic.
But I never really heard of him before. I heard of him, but didn't know about his story. And then from that book, I started to watch a lot of like documentaries, loads of his recordings of him just speaking, about an hour, 2 hours on YouTube. They're really great. I recommend people, and he's just an incredible guy.
What do you think of his guru?
Gurus are an interesting thing. There's so many kind of gurus you find that actually turn out to be pretty malicious people, or like
that guy from that Netflix documentary.
Osho, or I guess people who call themselves gurus, like the guy who, I forgot his first name, is Bikram, who started Bikram yoga. Okay. There's a really good Netflix documentary about he kind of abused a lot of people and just power hungry and things like that. But it seemed like from what Ramdas said, he seemed like he was a pretty genuine, down to earth guy.
It seemed like he wasn't even the guy. It seemed like he was just like awareness. Like he was just like apparently he would just disappear. He would just go out into the woods and
mind read and all these kind of crazy stories. And I guess that you got to think, And the time, I think didn't he take like 100 tabs of acid or something like that? Just a ridiculous amount of acid, and nothing happened. Yeah. So, I guess it's whatever you believe in that, but
I think it takes a certain degree of faith, right? And you don't know whether something is real until you have it confirmed by your experience. So it's no use just believing something. But I mean, this is actually interesting, right? Because I was at the gym with talking to Jamie about
Big up Jamie.
Big up Jamie Scott, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu London. So we were talking about yogis that can fast for an extended amount of time, right? Yeah. And there's yogis that, whether you believe it or not, they can enter a state of samadhi, which is like a deep meditation. It's almost like psychedelic. It's almost like they just return to the source, right? But they're here in body, but in mind they're just like at the source, I guess, or they are like one with the source, and they can be in that state for like a year without eating. Like Ramana Maharshi, who I've got a book up there about. I think it's called Be As You Are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he left home at like 16 years old. He went to this mountain and he meditated for, I think it must have been for about a year straight without eating anything. And Jamie was so in disbelief of that. He's like, it's impossible. You're telling me that you fucked this geezer, you fucking went in.
He's eating some chicken breast.
Yeah. And so in his mind it was impossible that someone could fast for that long. It doesn't fit into his conception of the world. Yeah. Then I informed him that there was a guy who we have an account of in Western medicine, He was a guy from Scotland. He was.
I know this story.
Do you know about this guy?
Yeah, crazy.
So what was he? With like maybe 400 pounds or something.
Ridiculously overweight. I'm sure you can find photos of him.
There's like before and afters. He looks like Terence McKenna after he's lost the weight. Have you seen him?
I've seen it. Yeah.
But so after that, I showed him like the fact that this gentleman fasted for, I think it was over a year. It was like 382 days or something. And all he took was like a multivitamin a day.
Yeah.
And sometimes he had
like
tea with milk.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Just to sort of keep some like vitamins and minerals in him. But
and then suddenly there was a change, because before that conversation, he thought it was impossible to fast for a year, right? And I believe that's kind of how that's kind of the efficacy of belief. It's like I mean, what is it worth? Unless you can back it up with experience, belief in itself is almost doesn't carry any weight with it. You know what I mean? But at the same time, there is things that you intuitively know, like I don't know, like the fact that you might return after, like you might be reincarnated after you die.
Yeah.
Or do you have any thoughts on that?
In reincarnation, I would like it to be true. I would like it to be that when you die, we're not just going to be darkness, nothing.
Which is what you had in your DMT trip, right?
Yeah. I just I just went into that. That was really scary almost. It wasn't like a pleasurable thing. At the start, it was sort of visuals, things like that. But then I just went into this kind of like nothingness, darkness, and it was like almost like space. There was like no sound, it was like a black hole almost. Because you get some people, maybe I just didn't go through. Maybe I was.
It sounds like you did though.
Yeah, it's like, I think everyone's so different. It's so dependent on your own beliefs and kind of what the DMT trip does. But a lot of people, they do it. They go through this kind of barrier. They go into other worlds, aliens, things like that. But I just got like, it was like death,
darkness.
But it was quite. After I thought about it lots afterwards, it was quite. I'm glad it made me more think about death, not in a more morbid way, but just that. You know, we're all going to die sometime, like I mentioned earlier. It's all trying to think about what we can do every day to help other people and, have some kind of purpose in this life. Because, any point we could die. And
do you think it could have been like the way the universe was prior to the Big Bang? Maybe something like that, just like a black vacuum or something?
It did feel like, there was something maybe waiting to happen. But maybe if I did another trip, I would kind of see more about what would happen to that kind of dark blackness space.
Did anything happen to it, or did you just return?
Just returned. Yeah. It was just complete death, like darkness, and then return back into it. And I looked up and I saw you kind of running around the room.
Did you have any conception of like body when you were in that space?
No, I definitely had a bit of an ego death. Maybe similar to you, just I didn't know who I was, my name, my gender, things like that, which I had before when I've done ayahuasca. And I think that's a really powerful experience, that you're not, like who are you, and really thinking about like what defines you. Is it your gender? Is it the things you do? Which I think I'd more push for, like the ideas and values I stand for. Like when you kind of a good like question to think about or to journal about is like, what do you want your obituary to read? You'd probably most like it to be like the maybe things you help other people doing, rather than like how big my bench press is or things like that. It's you want these
unless
things,
you're Charlie Corley.
Yeah, maybe. So that made me think a lot about what do I want to be remembered for, not in like a really ego way, but just thinking about what gives me purpose and meaning, and trying to do things every day to grow myself and to help the people around me, and that's why I'm really fortunate I found health coaching. I feel it's something that I can do a lot of like good work in.
How did you find health coaching?
I think originally it was on like a podcast, like about January last year. And it's still quite a new concept, and I kind of heard about it on a podcast, and I was just like, that's quite intriguing. Never really thought of doing that kind of thing. So I thought about doing a PT course like yourself, and that definitely intrigued me, but I wanted to look more, I guess, other aspects of health rather than more like movement specific. And I just looked into it, and then I've been very grateful that not grateful for COVID, but that sounds
Thank
wrong.
God for COVID.
I'm very grateful for the experience I've had, in the sense that I was furloughed.
Yes.
From where I work, so I had a lot of free time.
Yes.
That's what I'm trying to say. So I had a lot of free time, and I'm still getting some money coming in. So just like, this is the perfect time to learn something new and get qualified, and that's what's helped me a lot during this lockdown, is having some kind of routine.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I think I'm going a bit stir crazy.
Because you were just at home, just chilling.
Just at home, and like it's weird thinking. I think a lot of people had thoughts this year since COVID about, okay, now I haven't got to go to work because of COVID. I'm still getting paid some salary because of the furlough kind of scheme of the government. What do I want to do day to day? Obviously, there's a limit because of the freedoms we have at the moment with lockdown. But I think it's made a lot of people question and think, like, what do they actually enjoy? What do they actually like doing? Hopefully, when we get out of lockdown, it's going to hopefully change a lot of people's beliefs about what really makes them happy, what they really want to do. For me, it's like relationships a big thing of that, and I really want to do more things like bringing my friends together and having things like meaningful conversations. I think podcasts are a beautiful thing with that, because it's not often that. I think we would do it anyway, but just like setting a time, like, okay, today we're going to speak, no phones, nothing for an hour, 2 hours, and just really get to know each other. And I've done that a lot recently when I've done like practice health coaches sessions with the students in my course. And they're all video chats, but like I spent an hour, 2 hours similar to this, asking questions to each other. I'll pretend to be the coach, they'll pretend to be the client, and then we'll kind of role reverse. And it's just really nice just looking someone in the eye and just sort of, really getting to know them and as like a human being. So I find it really beautiful to have more engaging conversations and try and be less on my phone, which can be quite addicted to, like most people.
I mean, there's no real pleasure that comes from the phone. I guess it's almost like like it pacifies your anxiety momentarily, and then it just compounds and it becomes double, and you end up. It's like Michael Nathan Pepper was a Buddhist, and he talks about how in Buddhism they do not favor the use of intoxicants, and television and smartphones are essentially intoxicants, because anyone who's used Instagram for an hour in the evening knows that after you get off that, like, good luck getting anything else done. Your brain is mush after that.
It's dull.
Yeah, completely dull. Yeah. But I don't know. Whenever I get the urge to do something like that, there has to be a balance, right? Yeah. I mean, it's a tool. It's a tool for promoting things like podcasts or your business, your practice, or whatever. But I heard a really good quote, and it was like, if you're not paying for the service, then you are the service, right?
That's really good, like that.
Yeah. Like, or if you're not paying for the product, then you are the product. Yeah.
How do you balance it with like phone and social media? Do you have a way that you are able to kind of like use it? Obviously, I use it, and like most people listen to this will probably use social media. But how do you stop yourself from
just mindlessly scrolling?
Yeah.
I try to, if I catch if I've just gone through mindlessly scrolling for 15 minutes, I'm like, okay, that's enough. But sometimes I just won't even notice that I've done it, and then it's even harder. Like, after having a long shift at work, I'll sit down and I say to myself, I'm going to sit down for like half an hour just to decompress, and I'll just go on YouTube and stuff like that. And then I'll look at the clock and it's been like 45 minutes. I'm like, wow, that's a lot of time I've just wasted, when I could have been. I think meditation is great when you're in that space. Yeah. Because essentially your mind is just screaming. It's just like a caged monkey that's just and it just wants some kind of gratification. It wants to be noticed. It wants entertainment. And then you just sit down and you just watch your breath, and then you come back into your center again, and you have it under control, essentially. Which is not the way to think about it as well, because if you try to control the monkey, it wants to thrash even more. So you I guess you make friends with the monkey, and then you say to it, like, oh, can you just watch my breath? And the monkey's like, yeah, I'm good at watching things. Yeah, and it's very interesting. It's very interesting, man. It's very interesting because it's so difficult to stay in that space where all you're doing is just breathing. It's almost impossible to just be there. In a half an hour meditation session, you might spend like 3 minutes in that state. The rest of the time, you're going to go out on a big thought loop, and you're not going to realize that you're on it until like 11 minutes into it. You're like, oh, wow, I was so caught up in that. Yeah.
I think that's what's hard to get a lot of people into meditation. And it's good that recently, last 10 years, been so much kind of good scientific research about how it can help you in various different aspects. And when I kind of talk to people who are maybe more A-type personality, who wouldn't call themselves spiritual or would do it for that purpose, and you kind of more speak about meditation. It is kind of medicine, I guess.
I want to have a t-shirt that says meditation over medication.
100%.
That's a good t-shirt, right? Yeah.
That t-shirt.
Yeah. Now, during lockdown, that's when I really started to connect with meditation, and because I was working a lot, so I'd commute like 45 minutes to my work, and I'd listen to a lot of Buddhist podcasts. I listened to Ram Dass, and they were talking about spirituality in a way that I'd never heard before, and that's what really opened me up. And I had a big awakening just before that with you in the DMT world.
Yeah. Spooky.
Yeah, very spooky, man. Very spooky. But I'm glad that happened. It's funny because I'm reading this book, which is right here, and it's called The Serpent in the Sky.
Yeah.
I'll show it to the viewers there, and it's essentially a reworking of this guy called R.A. Schwaller de Lubic's work on the Temple of Man in Luxor and general like Egyptian architecture. And it's the idea that the Egyptian architecture was designed, or all of these pyramids and hieroglyphs, they were designed in order to outline a path to enlightenment or liberation, and they considered that the true purpose of this incarnation is to return to the source. There is nothing else. Like, if you're here, there is nothing else to do other than to achieve that state of nirvana or enter the kingdom of heaven, that Jesus said. And it's mirrored in their kind of artwork and their monuments. It's very fucking interesting, man. Like, it talks about art in this section here, right? And it says about, I mean, look how beautiful that is.
Wow.
Do you see that? Like, that is just straight out of the DMT realm, right? Do you see that?
Is that just
the symmetry?
That's obviously based on a real.
Yeah. So this is what Napoleon. I think it was a painter under Napoleon, because Napoleon essentially rediscovered Egypt. When he went there, he found the pyramids buried. There was like a third of them was buried under sand, and the Sphinx itself was buried too. And they just kind of worked to excavate and do all this stuff. But it's pretty incredible. So the book makes this case that we look at the Egyptian art and the hieroglyphs, and we just say, look at these poor, stupid Neanderthal people that couldn't get beyond making little pictures of birds and little bison and stuff like that. But the thing is that this was the accepted mode. To use symbolism, essentially, to use symbols, is so much more powerful than to use language, because one symbol can encapsulate 1,000 words.
Yeah.
And it's also able to do that across languages and across cultures and across time. So that's why they chose symbols, and the symbols were rather static across this period, and that is attributed to the simplicity of the Egyptians. They say that they just lacked any sophistication, and we regard self-expression as like the highest ideal of art, whereas they would master their art and then act within the barriers of their mastered art. So, like, for example, you do jiu-jitsu, right? You're not just going to start like just gouging someone's eye out and make a new move, even though that's quite creative, right? If you just start putting your finger in someone's ear and pulling them as a little neck drag or something, or a butt drag, I don't know. But the thing is, like, if you the way to do it is to truly become immersed in it, to learn it, and then to be creative through that, right? And this is what their whole idea was. It's like they had the mode down, so they just like passed it down throughout the artists. And then it talks about how, by contrast, art in our society is very either egotistical or neurotic for the most part. So you think about any genre of like art or painting or anything, it serves to talk about the artist, like, for example, like a rapper's rapping about themselves.
Yeah.
Or it's neurotic in that, you know, it's about heartbreak, or it's about not getting what you want, or whereas the purpose for them was to not have art separate from religion or spirituality or philosophy or mathematics. So everything was one, and it served as a kind of red flag to show you what the meaning of life was. And a lot of people say that, and I'm so pumped to go to Egypt. I'm definitely going to go there. They say that you have to, like, there's no use seeing Egypt through a textbook, but you have to actually be there to experience it. That's what Egypt is. It's almost like you have to be there and then you understand it. Otherwise, you just can't quite understand it. It's quite incredible, really, man.
Yeah, just that whole civilizations like it that was so far. Yeah. In history, and it's I guess like a Western mind thinking about we're the best and we know this technology, things like that.
The pinnacle of mankind.
But yeah, there's thousands of years ago, all of these things to do with like medicine, architecture, religion, spirituality. It's just it's incredible.
Yeah.
I went to Egypt to my family about like maybe 12, 13 years ago, and yeah, just going inside some of the pyramids and just
You went to the pyramids?
Went to the pyramids, yeah.
Jeez.
And it was just incredible, just seeing all of that architecture there. Then went to like Jordan as well, where they have like Petra. We see the kind of big
in the mountain, right?
In the
They've
mountain,
carved.
you see like Indiana Jones, that kind of famous scene where they carved into the mountains, the rock, these like just pillars, and
they're giant, right?
Absolutely giant, and just it's so incredible that people spent how many thousands or hundreds of years just building all of these like monuments and architecture, and now a lot of stuff we see today are very kind of like fast, like just put something up really quickly and not put too much effort or love into it,
like council housing, for example. And this is another thing that this book says, is that human beings, we're kind of vibratory mechanisms, right? We're electric kind of circuits, electric mechanisms, and we respond to different vibrations, and different architectural formations affect our vibration in a certain way. So that when you're in a sort of like council house, there's nothing in here that makes your vibration higher, you know. But when you're in a space like that, like, I don't know if you try to meditate in the pyramid or if you could, but I imagine it would be very fucking. I imagine it would charge you up like nothing else. Yeah. Yeah,
definitely the surroundings can really have effect on your kind of feelings, your emotions, your energy.
Yeah.
100%. I guess that's why it's good to have, if you're able to have some kind of home or house that you can make your own and kind of come back to, and it's a safe space where living with people that you really trust, and you can, like you've done, and I try and do in my bedroom as well, just have like a really good place where I like, for me, lots of plants, lots of things are kind of written down, and kind of gives me creativity and ideas and books and things like that, and just really make it your own place that you can hopefully be creative in and make your own stuff. So
it's very important. You have a podcast.
I do a podcast.
Tell me about your podcast.
Well, when first I was saying I want to...
By the way, that's got CBD in it and it's delicious.
That's right. It smells wonderful.
It does, right?
Because you also put... what was it?
Lemon, ginger, and mint.
Mint. Yeah, good combo.
Yeah.
No sage, but...
No sage. We couldn't find sage. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I haven't run out. I'm pretty sure. Unless I gave it to someone. Unless I just gifted it to someone. But yeah.
Back to the podcast.
Yeah, tell me about your podcast.
Come on. I just want to say thank you to you first, because last time I was on this episode, I hadn't created the podcast yet, and you really kind of
you were
pushed
just
me.
about to.
Yeah, you kind of really pushed me to do it, and it's, I don't know if you had the same feelings, but I was definitely very nervous of doing it, and like put myself out there, and that kind of whole thing with social media and really being, I guess, vulnerable. You know, this is who I am. This is what I'm about.
Yeah.
And the first few episodes, like most people's first episodes, are going to suck a little bit. I'm going to make mistakes because I'm starting out. I'm not sure how everything works, audio, or just how to communicate ideas effectively. But yeah, it's just been a super fun thing to be able to do. Yeah. And it kind of started quite organically. I didn't intend, when I started my health coaching course, that I would do a podcast. I just started sending like a voice message out to a few various people like yourself, just with my learnings of that week, and it really helps me. I think, the jiu-jitsu of things, if you teach other people a certain skill, you can learn yourself. So that's what I was doing, teaching people about, I don't know, gluten or various things to do with sleep or stress, whatever it was. And then had a few people like yourself and a few other kind of friends that you should start a podcast and put out to more people, and hopefully I
felt like it was a podcast when I was listening to it, because I'd stick it on the way to like jiu-jitsu or something. I was like, oh damn, oh shit, that's really interesting.
Yeah, a little voice message. Voice message is a beautiful thing. But yeah, I've done it for about 2 months now. I've done like 11, 12 episodes, and I really enjoy it, and it's interesting. I'm getting sick of my own voice, definitely. Just listen to my own voice over again and editing and everything. But it's given me a lot of opportunities. And maybe same with you, don't know, by putting yourself out there, being creative, whatever it is, you don't know where it's going to go to. Like, because I put myself out there and was vulnerable, I was offered to go on another podcast.
Oh, nice. What podcast was that?
It was, I recorded it yesterday, actually.
Oh, wow.
With a friend. It was called A Way to Live Well, with my friend Anna Maria, who's a yoga teacher and a massage therapist.
Nice.
But things like that I would just never have been able to do. And I'm sure in the future there'll be more opportunities, and I can help more people and share the message of kind of health. And that's what, because the main message I'm trying to do is health to practice, not an idea, in the sense that so much theory related to health, and unless you kind of really experiment yourself, there's not one diet that suits everyone. It's like really kind of interested to hear about your kind of journey with being vegan now, and kind of how you feel that's changed, how you're feeling with your body and mind. And I've done other kind of change of diets and other movement practice in my past, and I think I've kind of drawn upon that now and can be able to share that with others, that it's good to experiment, and there's not like maybe one set thing that is going to last you the rest of your life. You need to try out different modalities, whatever that is, and it's been fucking amazing.
Would you ever, because you seem to have a formula which I really like, because it's kind of like, what is the length of each podcast average? Just 15 minutes, right?
10-15 minutes. It's really short, like a bite-sized podcast.
Yeah.
Because it's only me speaking. So if it was, I think people get bored if it's just like one person speaking
for like an hour.
And obviously part of the beauty of podcasts in general, like your one, is that it's two people having a conversation. But my one, it's more just like quite condensed, 10 minutes. At the end, I'll definitely put a few kind of practical ideas you can put into your life. But each topic, it could be about gut health, or things to do with your mental health, or whatever it is, different subjects to do with kind of holistic health. And just, it really helps me to learn, put those ideas down. And in the future, when I'm actually like a certified health coach, it's going to be good to have that wealth of information that I can kind of draw on and kind of look back on, and help me to learn, help to kind of support.
Would you ever get other people on there?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about it, and I'm trying to see how best I would do that. I know a few of the podcasts that are coaches in various fields, whether it's to do with like sport or music, whatever it is, and they sometimes have people on who their clients are, and either do a live or pre-recorded kind of like assessment with someone. So you go to someone on and you give them like a free kind of one-to-one health coach assessment, and you just sort of speak about what they're going through, what issues they're doing, and then just sort of have that personal kind of approach to it. So that's kind of one idea. But I'm still kind of going over a few. So if you got clients, you would bring them on to kind of track their journey if they were open to it. Yeah, exactly. It's a balance, because a lot of it's quite confidential and quite people's health is like the most personal thing. So it's got to maybe let's say I'm doing a 6-month program with someone. I've got a few people now that I'm supporting in various health goals, health concerns. And one person I'm just started working with who's going to do a marathon in 6 months' time. So I'm just helping them with that and their kind of whole I guess ideas towards health and sleep and recovery and things like that. So maybe at the end of their time with me, and we'll help them out, and then maybe get them on the podcast and just speak about their experience and things like that. But that'd be a good idea. So many opportunities, and I feel it's a way I can really be creative. I don't know if you feel the same way with your podcast. Yeah, I think it's interesting doing this podcast because, again, like you, I think I've told you the story before, but on New Year's Day, like a year and a half ago, or just over a year ago, I did acid. And then as I was coming down from the trip, I watched his 10 years in review of Joe Rogan, because it was the 10-year anniversary. And it kind of struck me that I'd been listening to it for 10 years. And I thought to myself, you know that old saying that's like, the best time to plant an oak tree is 10 years ago. The second best time is today. Yeah. I thought to myself, I've been thinking about doing a podcast for ages. And not in the way that... I don't know what I expect to do from it, but I know that I have certain temperament. I have a certain temperamental, complex that allows me to talk to people and have interactions, and I feel like that lends itself to this sort of medium. So I just thought I should fucking do this, and it's interesting because you learn things doing this, you learn about how to set up a fucking studio, like what not to do, like what's kind of amateur. I was going to do this without lights, which just looks terrible. It just looks like I was talking to Dimitri, Dimitri Brakanov, and he helped me to set this up, and he's got a podcast called Advice Squad. Okay. Have you seen it? I've listened to a little bit of that, yeah. It's quite funny. They were going to call it Agony Cunts. But they didn't. And so anyway, he was saying that if you don't have lighting, for example, it just looks like softcore porn. No, it looks like amateur porn. Okay, sorry. Yeah. And I was like, is there something wrong with amateur porn? I was like, that's sometimes the best. Yeah, exactly. You don't want it to look too polished. We know what we're doing. Yeah. But I think one thing I didn't realize is how important networking is for podcasts. So, for example, and this is not the way you need to look at it. So I know that, if I got someone with a big following that I had no connection to, I could get a lot of ears on my podcast. But it's almost like that's going to destroy your podcast, because you're going to get a lot of you're not going to get the audio ship that you actually want or you think your podcast deserves, right? But there's also a balance in that, that if you want to make your podcast more popular, you have to get people that have a lot of eyes on them, right? Yeah. And I guess that's just the world that we live in. I mean, you look at really skilled professional boxers that barely get paid £1,000 a fight, or maybe they get paid a bit more than that.
depending on their level, and then you get a YouTuber that goes into boxing and then gets paid, unseen amounts of money. Which I don't know how you feel about that, but for me, it's just how the market is, and you can't criticize it. You can't say it's bad. It's like when people say footballers get paid too much, and it's like, well, look, the footballers generated all that income. Yeah. It's not like we had to prioritize, okay, do we fund schools, hospitals, or football? That's not what it is, and it's the same way with Jake Paul. Jake Paul generated all that income. He didn't take money away from other boxers. If anything, he's propping other boxers up, because suddenly people are becoming more interested in boxing. They're more likely to buy boxing cards, and also fighters will fight on his undercard or his main card. Yeah. So, yeah.
I think in general, it's I guess how you view it, and I would say it's a good thing, because I try and now look at people like yourself who are doing these things with podcasts and various things, and look at it like, oh wow, like inspiration. I could look at you, for example, be like, oh, what's Alex doing? He's trying to do this, and like you're just really kind of hateful about it. But I think it's about attitude thing, and being like, what you do now gives you motivation to do my own podcast, to do various things. Same with like Jake Paul, whatever it is. So I think there's enough to go around with people, and it's about, I guess, supporting people, standing on the shoulders of giants that come before you, and just really trying to, do all that you can. But at the same time, we are living in this kind of like capitalist system that has all these kind of good and bad things. So you have to kind of, as you said, play the game sometimes, and be on social media and try and work with people that have got a large following, because I guess only you can know like what you're doing it for, the reasons for it. Is it just like monetary value, or is it doing something like higher purpose, helping the people, whatever that is? So
I mean, I make about 10 million a year from the podcast, but I don't do it for that. What do you think about, because you mentioned the capitalist system, like, do you have some kind of view on capitalism itself? Have you thought deeply about it? Because capitalism is a dirty word. There's no doubt about it. People attach negative connotations to capitalism. And from where I stand, there are good things with capitalism, there's bad things with capitalism. The good thing is that people can... because essentially what capitalism is, the exchange of goods and services, right? And as long as there's people, there'll always be the exchange of goods and services in exchange for some kind of like monetary compensation. But then when you get to the point where you pollute the environment, or you exploit nature, that is where capitalism needs a bit of work, or I'd say some regulation. But ultimately, I don't think it's a bad thing,
It's just difficult when it's such a big, large, kind of complex system. As you said, there are like a lot of things, like in a lot of people, there's good and bad qualities about it, and I think it can, and it has definitely gone too far in lots of areas, to do with let's say environment, or the arms trade, or human rights and things like that. But it is a system we're living in, and we can only do, I guess, try and change us first as individual, and do the best we can, and then hopefully surround the people around you with love, and change them, and try and have like a better capitalist system, because it's not going to change overnight to something else. I'm trying to think of the phrase. It's like what is it called? Like an experiment they've done in like Norway and other places. I forgot what the term is, when they've kind of given everyone like a base salary.
Oh, like a universal basic income.
Yeah. Okay. And that's kind of interesting to think about. And I guess in some ways that's what.
How has it worked out in those countries?
So I think in most of it, it's first of all just finding how much that is, and if it's like enough for them to kind of pay rent, or maybe pay a little bit of their food bills. But I think in general, the country they've done it in, it's been quite successful in the sense that people have more time to really think about what they want to do, and either maybe like volunteer for various things, or pursue creative projects. And there are so many jobs that are, as you know, they're going to be obsolete in the near future, to do with auto robots, and more things becoming online, and various things to do with like shopping, and even kind of where I work at Yoga, a lot of gyms, a lot of that can be automated now. And
do you think?
Not all of it, and I still believe the value of human interaction. That's why I still think that even when we go back after lockdown, people still want to come and exercise, whether it's a gym, yoga studio, martial arts place, because nothing beats that human interaction. I think we'll have to do online stuff. It's like been sped up massively to do like health and fitness in gyms. That online is here to stay, but nothing will beat that human interaction of going to, let's say, a CrossFit class or MMA class, and just kind of being in the flesh and having everyone sweat around you and having that community aspect. But
I don't like to get pessimistic about the way things are heading, right? but we've been in lockdown for just under a year now.
Yeah.
I think it was like March 29th. It was very late March, and I remember that because we did DMT on March 7th, right? And then I moved in here on like March 12th.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks after that, there was the lockdown. And originally it was meant to be for, I think, 2 weeks or something. It was meant to be 2 weeks just to flatten the curve. And if you look at the cases that they had back then as well, they were so low to warrant a lockdown. I mean, like, if you compare them to the cases that we had in December, which were sort of 60, 70,000 per day, which is loads of cases, right? But I think at the time of the first lockdown, we were having sort of like 6,000 or something, 7,000. And you could argue that the lockdown caused the numbers to stay low and keep low and everything. But I don't know. It's just hard to imagine a time where the government will not impose lockdowns on people again.
Yeah, and there's lots of things I was being to mate the other day. Like, imagine being in a sweaty club, like a basement club with no windows, and everyone drinking alcohol, and like you're rubbing shoulder to shoulder with 100 people.
Gal everywhere.
It's just like such a or even being a festival. Like, obviously they cancelled Glastonbury already this year, but
They've cancelled it.
Yeah, because I was gonna go, but
damn,
alas. But maybe smaller festivals might be still on.
Yeah.
But yeah, things like that.
It won't be the same though. You have face masks. Yeah. People will be like, "Whoa, don't dance next to me."
It's weird, interacting with people and being in a space with even more than like one other person. And it's gonna take a long while, especially for like children growing up in this era of just like being told they can't hug people, touch people, show affection. And their school life is just all on like Zoom and video, and that kind of really shows the inequality of people who have enough money, parents have enough money to kind of have an extra room where the kids can work and has a laptop and all that stuff, whereas families that don't have that, and then their kids don't have maybe a laptop or a place to kind of work, and that's going to only increase the inequality of kids that, for whatever reasons they aren't able to kind of learn because it's all on Zoom and they haven't got special care, whatever it is. And so as you said, there's a lot of things that you could look as negative, but I think both of us are quite optimistic people, and you've got to just find those kind of little rays of sunshine to. So
I'm hoping the logical thing is that by sort of late March to beginning of April, everything opens up again. Yeah, the vaccine's been rolled out quite successfully and quite extensively, which I mean, I'm not anti-vax by any stretch of the imagination. I think that it should be up to you. You should conduct a sort of risk assessment, a personal risk assessment, and see whether you should have it or not. I had COVID. I was okay after 3 days. I think I don't need the vaccine, right? I think I'm okay. But I think a lot of people that are vulnerable should definitely take a vaccine because they're going to suffer if they don't have it. So with that in mind, I think that after we open in March, the temperature is going to get hotter again, which we know is something that COVID doesn't like. Yeah. So the cases go down quite unanimously. Yeah. But who's to say that it won't come back or mutate and keep coming back? And who's to say that it's not something that we're going to have to live with forever? And I don't know if you listen to the Tim Dillon podcast. You ever listen to it?
No.
It's very entertaining and informative, right? Because he's such a special person because he's like a raving conservative with like a liberal heart. And he's gay, but he's so like, he's like a macho New Jersey like kind of character, but he's gay. He's a walking contradiction. Yeah. And he chats shit about everyone. He's almost like, you know when Milo Yiannopoulos was saying the most outrageous shit, and it's like, well, what are you gonna say? He's gay, dude. You can't pull him up on what he's saying. You know what I mean? And he's saying so he had this funny thing where he got banned from Airbnb. There was a big like fiasco with it, and then he was attacking the hosts that ended up getting him banned and calling him lesbians and like being really kind of hateful. But because he's gay, it's okay. It's kind of hilarious. But anyway, he was saying that he's part of this app called Clubhouse, and it's an app that all the richest, mostly tech people of the world partake in, having all these Zoom meetings and stuff. And for some reason they've invited him on there, and he just sits there, and every so often he'll like offer a comic observation. They'll laugh, but he says that the world they're planning is a scary world. It's almost like a Brave New World that Aldous Huxley was envisioning. And it's there's so much power and there's so much money in those people that control tech, that they have the ability to shape the world in any way they want in order to conform to their idea of what a utopia should be. And that's very scary, because my idea of a utopia to yours is very different.
Yeah.
And if you had to live in my idea of a utopia, you wouldn't like it. And if I had to live in yours, I wouldn't like it. You know what I mean? So I kind of think that that's where the world is going. And ultimately, we need to leave the cities and go back to nature. I think... I'm not saying we all need to do that, because then nature would be terrible. It would be like Canning Town, but like there would be Canning Town in nature. But what I think I'm going to do in the next 2 or 3 years is leave London and go somewhere where I can grow my own food and be in like smaller community. So yeah, just to avoid stuff like that as much as possible. Yeah.
Can I join you?
You can. Do you want to come?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'll be in Greece.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like it.
I'll be in Greece. I'm gonna have a nice big gym. I already have a concept for it. It's actually up there. Do you see it on the right hand side, that piece of paper? It says Garden of Eden Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna call it that, but I just imagine like loads of plants inside an old building. So where my grandmother lives, directly underneath is my granddad's old restaurant, and it's completely empty and unused. It hasn't been used for ages, and the space is huge. It's like maybe. You know where you walk onto the mat area at Diesel Gym?
Yeah.
It's like from that point where you walk in, all the right-hand side, it's like that big, which is great, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm thinking of just putting loads of plants everywhere and just a white mat. Yeah. It's going to look sick.
I think sometimes, I've seen a few, I don't know whose gym it is in America. It's just all like white mat, white, white
AOJ,
walls.
isn't it? The Mendes brothers.
It just looks so beautiful.
Yeah.
And then having either glass windows, it looks out onto like an ocean or like forest or something like that. And I think that's a fucking great idea.
The thing is that, I mean, jiu-jitsu gyms have just as much artistic license as cafes and fucking restaurants.
Yeah.
And you don't just have to have blue and red mats and fucking die or die trying shit like that on the wall. You don't have to have that, because it's an artistic pursuit. Like, for example, this is one thing I really enjoyed about lockdown is all these undercover jiu-jitsu gyms that emerged, all these people that were doing jiu-jitsu in their house.
Yeah.
And for example, at Jacob's house, we had there was a real like skateboard theme, because he had these old boards on the wall. Did you ever see them? Did you ever go there when Jacob was still living there? It was pretty cool. I've got some videos that kind of show it. But it was a really cool setup, and we had like 90s hip hop along with that skate theme and rolling, and it's also beautiful. You know what I mean? It all just goes together so well.
Music is such an important part of a lot of movement.
Yes.
Whether it's dance or jiu-jitsu, whatever it is. I always thought, what if you did had a live band playing?
Whoa, that's
jiu-jitsu?
so next level.
Just obviously it would have to be, I don't know, some kind of like, I don't know, reggae, or I don't know what it could be, but. With a good beat.
I really like hip hop.
Yeah,
like,
works.
Yeah, not hip hop as in like sort of 90s hip hop.
Yeah,
something like the old school hip hop. You know, that's what they did at ADCC trials in America. I don't know if they actually did it in the ADCC finals as well, but in the trials, they just had blaring, like it was almost like a skate event. And it's very interesting that the parallels between skateboarding and jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Because you have it's an atomic sport. There's only one person doing it, yet there's a team and everyone's trying to get each other better. There is that element of competition. Essentially, you're only going against yourself. You're not actually going against other people. Yeah. Even though you can lose to other people. And style is so important. Whereas in jiu-jitsu, it's also so important, style.
And your kind of clothes can kind of like, everyone is different. You can wear what you want kind of thing.
Yes.
Especially no-gi jiu-jitsu, and it's dangerous same time, and there are injuries, same in both sports. But and I guess it's maybe not that alternative now, but it's definitely on the fringes of kind of sports compared to the most like modern day sports like football, rugby, and cricket and things like that.
Yeah.
You get a lot of people who come from different backgrounds, and it's just such a real sport, and it's not often day-to-day life that you get to connect with so many people, and it's so intimate with so many people that most times you just like give someone a handshake, whatever it is, maybe a hug. But with jiu-jitsu and things like that, or wrestling, it's you become so close to certain people, and like for 5 minutes I'm trying to kill you, you're trying to kill me, but afterwards you shake hands like we're best friends again. Which is a weird thing.
It's so weird
when you look at it from the outside.
It's very interesting. Like you said, a lot of people, they'll go through their life and barely even like I think some people might go days without touching another human being, and I think that's ultimately very unnatural to us, because we are so used to being part of a small but significant enough collective comprising of like 150 people that you have intimate connections with, meaning that you're like constantly around them, touching them and talking to them. And that is one of the diseases of our time, is this loneliness epidemic. You know, where we're so separate from each other. Even I mean, 100 years ago or even less, you'd live with your parents and your grandparents. Then suddenly we decided the grandparents shouldn't live with the parents, and then now even the parents don't live together. It's like the mum, like they live separately, and they'll come together at separate times. You know, it's very interesting
how it's changed the family dynamics, and just how I think I mentioned before the Blue Zone study, with the kind of like studies of people all over the world who are 100 years old or more. And one of the main things they had from that, which is similar in different parts of the world, was that they had multi-generational living. And just people, it's stay together. And then when you get old, your family look after you rather than being shipped away to a old people's home. And it's just such a sad, lonely thing if you're just like, an old people's home, just like waiting to die kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I really like about your idea about, having more people together, not like a massive amount, but 100 or less in some kind of community. One of the ideas I've seen, I think it's in Denmark or Norway, of different ways of living. They'll have maybe 10 families living together, in the sense they've got a big shared area in the middle where they kind of cook and eat. They've all got their own little kind of rooms, their bedrooms and
really
bathrooms.
cool.
They kind of they're private in some ways, they want to be. Then they have this big kind of social area in the middle where they can all kind of cook and laugh and eat together and play. I think that's kind of a nice thing to be able to do. Because a lot of people I know, I don't know about you, who want to buy a house maybe in London or somewhere else, and they want to live by themselves or happy living by themselves. And it is good to be comfortable being by yourself, but I think that's such a tragedy in some ways. If you just want to be by yourself, I think it's you can get so much from life from loving other people, even though that's difficult, and you probably from doing that you're going to get heartbreak and have to be vulnerable and all those kind of shitty things. But I think it's worth the risk of doing that, and just sort of
That's one of the things that scares me the most about entering a relationship, right? Because I mean, you enter a relationship, or at least I do, like in a rush, and then you don't consider the true responsibility that comes with having a relationship. And the thing about being intimate with someone is that they see you at your most vulnerable, the same way that you would see you at your most vulnerable, but you share that with someone, and that can be very difficult. Like, but at the same time, so when your ego is hurt within a relationship, right, and I've experienced this in the past, your partner can see that you're upset, and you know it's your fault. You know that it was something that you did, and then you'll confess that to your partner, and then you'll have this moment of consolation, and then it will just ignite this energy again, and it's like I guess that's what the yoga of being in a relationship is, right? It's just calling out your own insecurities or your own complexes and working through them with that person and constantly renewing it. And if you're not doing that, if you're keeping things in, if you're becoming resentful and not expressing yourself when you should be expressing yourself, that just leads to the kind of breakdown of relationships.
Yeah, so like a process. I don't know if you've read any books by, I think his name's Alain de Botton. He's like a philosopher, English philosopher, who's written a few books about like love and the meaning of love. And one of his books, which I've listened to some bit recently, or read some bit recently, was about kind of the arc of love, from when you first meet someone to when you've no longer in a relationship with someone.
Wow.
And when you first meet someone, you're giving your A game, and you're not your true self.
Yeah.
You're kind of pretending to be this kind of wonderful person.
Yeah.
And it's same what you're saying about like parents, and that you first think there are these amazing people, but eventually, simply if you're in a relationship with someone, you eventually discover who they really are. Yeah. And everyone's good and bad. And when you first see someone, you have these fantasies about their amazing human being, and then you realise that you realise what dawns on you, that they're actually just like another human being, and they've got good and bad things like everyone else, like yourself. And yeah, I guess when you first meet someone, it's like a beautiful thing, and I guess
it's illusion. It's a big illusion.
But I guess the more you're with someone, it can be challenging, it can be hard, but there are some really great things that can come out of it, of being someone for like a long period of time. At least there's stories of people who've been together for like 60 years. Wow. Like imagine that, like if you're together with one person for 60 years, and the friendship and relationship you would have got from that person, and how that's changed you. It's pretty incredible.
Tom Segura I don't know if you know Tom Segura, the comedian. Have you ever watched his stand-up?
A little bit. Have you heard the story of him recently? How
No.
his injury?
No. What happened?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it's Tom Segura. He about I think a month ago, I was on Joe Rogan podcast. He was playing basketball with Bert.
Yeah.
And he tripped, and as he tripped, I think he blew out his knee.
Jesus.
And also blew out his shoulder as well. It's like there's a video. It's so fucked up. He kind of trips over and like messes up his knee, then falls almost like a Kimura. He kind of Americani. He just falls like that as well.
Oh no!
And it just And Rogan was talking about it in the sense that obviously, but Tom Segura wasn't in a great shape, and he just kind of fell. And obviously, things maybe already loose in his body, but yeah, it's fucked up. But
Jesus Christ.
Anyway, back to your story.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, he has this joke about when you first meet someone and he does a little impression. It's like, oh, just so you know, I'm like this. And it's cool, just so you know, I'm like this. And it's like, that's not really who you are at all. You're just like kind of projecting that, and then before you know it, you're kind of like farting in front of each other and stuff. Which I think that's something that is probably not good, to fart in front of your partner. I don't know. My mom was very gassy as a person, right? And she's very open about farting and stuff. And I just don't think that's good to have in front of your partner. I feel like there's some stuff that you should kind of like, that it should be kind of sacred a little bit, right?
It's
interesting.
It's interesting how much of can your partner ever know really who 100%?
Yeah.
I've known relationships I haven't, maybe sometimes they don't know fully who I am. It's probably something I'm still holding back because I'm scared about it or not wanting to be vulnerable with it. But if you do share everything, you go into the toilet in the same room and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, just a door open.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
Then does it become more of a friendship than a romantic relationship, or I don't know? It's I haven't got the answers. But,
I think the romance, it needs work to keep alive, because
communication.
The animal instinct is to have sex when you're first like attracted to each other, and that stays quite strong for the first year or so. But then after that, I don't know, there's some kind of like hormonal dissipation, and you don't have the same urge, but it doesn't mean that you have to go around, because that's what I used to think. I used to think that it's just a biological thing to tell you to go, and perhaps in the chimpanzee world or perhaps the animal wants to do that because it wants to procreate, it wants to reproduce, but I think that's not a long-term strategy for overall happiness and wellness. You can't just go around having sex with everything a year after. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one, but I think there are some great things you can gain from a long-term relationship that is different from like a one-night stand, and that's a lot harder to do. I think the few people I know who are experts in relationships or got degrees in college who work on that often say being in a long-term relationship is the hardest thing they've ever done in their life. Just like, especially if you've got children, things like that, you've got to constantly work on it, and everyone's got their own needs and good and bad qualities, and just sort of really trying to communicate effectively and be like, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, and how to keep that spark alive.
And it always changes. Like my cousin, she met her now husband when she was in the early 20s when she was studying, and their relationship when they first met is completely different to what it is now, because they have 2 young children now, and I think they're trying for a 3rd child. I think they are, I can't remember. But it's very different now. They're clearly into role of mum and dad, but it's also, it just looks so rich. Like, no one has more meaning than someone that has children.
Yeah, it gives you a purpose.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you the ultimate purpose. It's not like, I mean, if you have, you have a podcast, or you have a practice of some kind, like jiu-jitsu, some days you wake up and I just don't feel like it. When you have a child, there is no, I don't feel like it. It's like, I need to fucking look after this human being, right? And there's something about children that, like, for me, like, being around kids gets me so high. Like, it gets me feeling like a child as well, because you get to see, like, Sal has his daughter here, like, every Friday and Saturday. She's coming, is it Saturday? No, Saturday tomorrow. She's coming tomorrow. But, like, she'll just be around, and she'll just see the world in a different way, and you'll ask her about it, and then she'll allow you to see it that way as well, and it's like, your mind just blows, right? That novelty. Yeah,
children are the best. They just ask the best questions and do the best things, and are unafraid to be kind of silly, and often a lot of us lose that childlike behavior when we kind of grow up and have to put a suit on and go to work, things like that. But I think it's so important to be a child at any age of life, and just be okay making fun of yourself and not be so serious. I think so much of life is serious, that we need to just like, do silly things, and whether it's just like climbing a tree or just playing with kids, whatever it is, it's
or just being silly in a way that's kind of brave and not fearing some kind of ridicule. Like children do. Like Jesus said that in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must be as children again. And then also Carl Jung said something to that effect. He said that like the whole point of you have to abandon the inner child, I guess, to attain that adulthood, and then rediscover the inner child. And that's kind of like the whole process of true individuation, or because what the inner child or the divine child does is give new birth to the already existing character.
Yeah.
Because there's only so far that the inner child can take you, because eventually you have to stray and become kind of determined, right? It's funny, I heard Jordan Peterson talk about how people, especially young people, like, look out for this next time you see a 20-year-old. Their eyes are like that, right? Like they don't have a determined look on their face. You know when you see someone, like you look at Jamie's eyes and it's like a determined look. You know what I mean? You can see it in you. You can see it in other people that have been out in the world and they've practiced aiming for something and getting it. So they have a determined look, like I'm going to get this. But then you look at someone who's 18 years old and they have a look on their eyes like Simba does in The Lion King. It's like so innocent, right? There's absolutely no determination in their eyes. And Jordan Peterson says that when people come to him for like assertiveness training, because people that require assertiveness training are kind of pushovers and they can be kind of naive and they lack that determined attitude. And after say 5 or 6 sessions, they start to develop this kind of like a determined look in their eyes. Very interesting.
Do you know any specifics of what he would do in those sessions, or how you've, in your own life, gone from that stage to where you are now?
I guess just being more disagreeable. And because you think to yourself that being agreeable is synonymous with being good or being virtuous, but there is nothing virtuous about being unable to be disagreeable, because essentially that's what you're doing. You're disagreeable because you don't want conflict, because you know that would be your demise, right?
Yeah.
But when you've been in fires such as jiu-jitsu or such as financial fires or like the fires of the world, and you've made it out alive over and over again, you realize that, you know, if I'm disagreeable in this moment and something happens, it's okay, but I stand by this and this is what needs to happen. And I guess through like the world of work, especially like in my line of work, because I was in hospitality my whole life.
Yeah.
It's a pretty fucking ruthless place, hospitality, man, because there's a lot at stake. You have tiny deadlines. You have like minute deadline here, a 2-minute deadline there, another minute deadline, and they all come around so quickly. And they're kind of intertwined with longer deadlines. So, for example, like you have to make a coffee for someone who just ordered it, and that's a 2-minute deadline, but their food's going to be ready in 20 minutes, and then you have to clean someone else's table within 15 minutes. It's a bit of a mindfuck. And when something goes wrong, like say you drop a plate on the way to the table, or you get their order wrong, the chef's going to be like, "You're a fucking idiot. What the fuck is wrong with you?" And there's times when that's warranted, right? And that needs to happen. And when I first entered the world of work, I was that really kind of naive person that thought I was virtuous. I thought all these things about myself, but I just hadn't been tested yet. And I think through jiu-jitsu, through being an individual in the world, I developed a kind of determinism or determined outlook. But yeah, what about you? Do you feel anything like that?
Yeah, I think for me it's learning to say no sometimes. I think I'm the same as you. When I was younger, or 20, whatever it was, I was tried to always be the Mr. Nice Guy and always be agreeable and always say yes to certain things.
They call that simping now, the kids.
Never heard that before. That's a good word.
Simp.
Simp.
No, like SIMP.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll use that. I think a lot of it comes with time, or maybe what you said about doing hard things and overcoming them, or like suffering, or various other practices like that. You need to kind of go through the fire and come out the side, and realize if you say yes to everything, you are saying, you're not going to be effective in what you do, and you can't please everyone. Whether it's your podcast, for example, it's going to be people who don't like it, and there's going to be lots that do like it, but you can't. You just have to kind of do a gut instinct and kind of do what you want to do. And I found the same thing that jiu-jitsu, about just going week on, week out, getting crushed, getting tapped out, eventually get better. And using that analogy, I think you do as well, of like we all started out being a white belt, and you can use that white belt analogy to any area of your life, with juggling, for example, with podcasting, whatever it is. You start off, you're going to be really shitty, you make mistakes, but eventually you're going to get that higher belt. And obviously it's not about the actual belt itself, it's about the journey, the practice, and the things you develop from doing that. But yeah, I definitely feel, you know, both of us still very young in the grand scheme of things.
We have a lot of shit to do, man.
And we'll look back in 10 years' time, you know,
we'll watch this podcast, be like, we were so
idiots.
stupid.
Exactly. But then compared to 10 years ago,
we're like, look how good looking we look. I can't believe we didn't exploit that. I look at pictures of myself from when I was like 21. I'm like, bro, look how thick my hair was.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Oh man, it's good though. I feel like I really lived out that part of my life. Like when I was younger, I broke up with this girlfriend that I had. It was a very sweet girl. She was very beautiful, everything. But then I had this yearning inside of me to discover more. It was like a lust, basically. And I thought it was because, well, I believe that was the answer. Like, I would be happy if I did that, right? And then I went through that, and I met a lot of girls and did all this kind of dumb shit that you do when you're in your early 20s. And I'm glad I did, because I kind of know that it's not the answer now. And like, I remember it would happen so often. I don't know if you've been in that same situation, but you know, you have shit to do. You've always got shit to do, but you're in a nightclub at 3:00 in the morning because there might be a chance that you might have sex with someone that you don't really want to have sex with. And then by the time you go home and get her in bed, and it's like 6:00 in the morning, it's just not worth it at all. It's just kind of meaningless. But I'm glad that I did go through that at that time, because it means that now I guess I'm less likely to have that longing when I do enter a relationship. But who the fuck knows?
Who the fuck knows? Love is a tricky thing.
Yeah.
I think the same for me. I think every relationship that I've had, and same with you, I've kind of grown from it, and I've made lots of mistakes in my past, and I'm trying to now, in the present day and the future, just be more open, to show my emotions. And I think things like psychedelics really help me with that, and just thinking that different ways of everyone has different thoughts, and put myself in other people's perspective. Like if I'm with someone, or like talking to you, for example, just put myself in your perspective and what you're feeling. Like maybe you're having a shitty day. It's like, okay, what is Alex thinking? I always had this in his mind. So just kind of give him a kind of relax and just sort of like let him have that moment. So not always thinking that I know best, and just really, as I said, put myself in other people's shoes and what they've gone through. I think it's a big lesson for me.
And it's never personal. Like if someone behaves some way towards you and you deem that as egregious, it's never personal. It's never ever personal, because they're going through some shit that you can't even imagine. But because we get sensitive, it's like you get the ego, and suddenly their energy clashes with your ego. But it's the idea that you should just not be there, so it just goes through you. You can just observe it as like a phenomenon. You can just see it as like a cactus. You wouldn't judge the cactus for being prickly. It's just a fucking cactus. I think that's what meditation's really helped for me. Like whenever something like bad happens to me, it could be a really small thing or a large thing, I just sort of have to breathe through it and laugh it off. If it's like, for example, I don't know, really small insignificant thing, maybe I missed my train and got to wait 10 minutes on a platform. Maybe 10 years ago I'd be a bit pissed and annoyed, and energy would carry on, and maybe I would give that off to you, for example, if I saw you next. And I would just like laugh it off and be like, oh well, that happened. I'm not going to let that experience define the rest of my day. And you don't know where that's going to take you, right? Because so you miss your train, right? And for example, you see the news headline that the bus that you would have taken right after the train crashed and 10 people died. And you would have been on that bus. You just don't know where the fuck it's going to go. So it's just kind of worth letting go and just accepting. I like to be in control of things, and this one of the things that I like to practice, not being in control, because it's my natural inclination to want to control variables, right? And so I have this earthing sheet. Have you seen it?
I have. I'm definitely interested in getting one myself.
Do you know about them, right?
I know about them, but I haven't got myself,
Yeah. So you have to plug it into the mains. It doesn't have to be switched on. It's just so that it's plugged into the mains, and then you clip it onto the little clip that it has, right? Because it's got a wire that clips on. But I've had this on my bed now for 4 days and it's not been plugged in. And I just realized it this morning when I woke up. I was like, fuck! But it's crazy that, and I just had this like massive like angry outpouring, and I was like, okay, I'm good now. I just let it go after that and just started laughing about it. But it's crazy actually how, I mean, placebo is one of the most reliable effects there is, but it's crazy how well you feel after sleeping on it, and how more you realize your soreness and inflammation when you don't sleep on it. It's very interesting.
There always have that story, I think, from a lot of people who use grounding sheets of like, remember when you're at the ocean, the sea, and you're lying down on the beach in the sand, and just how good it feels like, or just in the summertime, you're on just in like a grassy field and you're lying down, just being connected with the earth, and it's such a nice feeling. And obviously that's trying to recreate that. And obviously the ideal situation is we'd live in a really nice climate and be able to go barefoot everywhere, but
like in the future when we live in Greece, obviously.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in the urban environment, it's hard to do that, and there's so much of our life in London especially that's concrete.
Yes.
Even outside my house at the moment, they're doing building works, and they could easily, instead of, there's a big concrete area with nothing on it, and they could easily put some few trees there, grass, but they're just putting new slabs over, just making it more and more grey, and it's it's not natural.
You know what's interesting? How there's so much unused space, and they'll just leave it abandoned instead of tearing out all the concrete and making some kind of community farming hub or something like that. That's never an initiative that's pushed for some reason. Like there's a space up here and it's like an old car park. It's huge.
Yeah.
If you just got some diggers in there, just got rid of the concrete, you could just start planting things and get all the community involved. Suddenly you're growing your own food, you're getting to know your neighbours more, crime becomes less. But I don't know. I feel like there is a sense of when you have things like government projects, they kind of do kick your leg and offer you a crutch. It's not sort of offering you a crutch when you're hurt, and then when you're done using it, you give it back. It's like, no, they want to keep you on that crutch for whatever reason. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's so cool to be able to have more of like spots in London or in the world where you can grow your own veg, and they are really popular. They're getting more popular, like urban gardening, things like that. But yeah, if you can grow some of your own veg, you have a deeper appreciation and relationship with the ground, the soil, and how much it takes to grow vegetables and fruit. And imagine, just going out into your garden, picking like a fig, whatever it was, and coming back and even eating that. It's a whole different experience. And I feel, if you're gonna eat animal products, imagine if you had the animal in your life, and you could sort of, if you had to kill it or eat it, that animal could last you a whole year, whatever it is, and you really pay respect to it, and it's the whole process rather than just going to a supermarket. You see like the meat in these kind of plastic slabs, and you've got no idea that the animal that you killed and what's gone into it. I think a lot of people forget. I definitely did beforehand a few years ago, thinking like this meat has come from a living animal. And I think if you do eat meat, you've got to really pay respect and kind of take a moment before you eat that meal of like, have gratitude and thanks that you're eating this living being for your own body.
How often would you say that you eat meat now? Because you were vegan for like 3 years or something, right? 3
years being vegan, and then probably about 5 days a week or some kind of
it's quite a lot of times a week.
Yeah.
Or you're vegan 5 days a week?
No, I'm probably vegan like 1 or 2 days a week.
Okay.
Or vegetarian 1 or 2 days a week, and then I'll have
meat 5 days a week.
Meat, yeah. So I have either like maybe some like a variety of animals, like, and then just really variety like chicken or pork, or I'm not set on like one.
I have a variety of animals.
And I don't have a massive amount, and I get smaller quality, so I can afford to have the best quality I can find.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I feel better having some animal products in my diet, but I know that being vegan can definitely work for some people. And I'm glad I went through that process, because before I was vegan, I just bought like the cheapest stuff out there. Like got like kind of pretty caged eggs, and just didn't really think about the connection. And then now I feel, even though I am killing animals now, I'm part of that process. For me personally, I've evolved a lot, and I'm much more appreciation of the animals and what they've been through. But I think there's a lot of people who don't have that appreciation and wouldn't maybe necessarily kill animal, but still eat animals and on a regular basis. What
was your diet like when you were vegan? Do you remember roughly like your daily eating plan?
Compared to now, it was definitely a lot more carbs. Maybe same as you can eat a lot more.
That's what I love about being vegan.
Rice, quinoa, potatoes, things like that.
Yeah.
Just
like, for example, did you have breakfast or would you fast?
For breakfast I'd have some kind of usually like porridge and loads of kind of fruit on it, similar to what your kind of inventions to your Instagram. Not as good as that, but just a variety of nuts, seeds, fruit, various things like that, a lot of salads, and then I guess more for the protein side of it, more like lentils, chickpeas, things like that. And it was generally good. And I think a lot of people feel a lot better going vegan when they first go vegan, especially because they've gone from a really processed diet full of lots of shit, and it's great when they go vegan because they understand the power of vegetables and getting a wide variety, a spectrum of colours in your diet. But yeah, I think I said before, like by the end, I just had a lot of like low energy and low sex drive.
Wow.
And yeah, I felt as soon as I kind of changed, I felt a lot better in a lot of ways. But that's just me personally. And from my course, one of the main things I take away from it is bio-individuality, that different diets can work. And you look at kind of different civilizations, different groups of people all over the world who live more ancestrally and maybe eat what we used to eat hundreds, 1,000 years ago. They're all variety of different diets. Some have a more high fat, low carb diet. Some people it's opposite. Some eat pretty much vegetarian, vegan. Some eat pretty much all animal products. And there's your diet depends on a lot of people.
Like an Eskimo and a Greek person have two different diets.
My gut health is going to be a lot different to yours probably, depending on our background. My ancestry is like Northern European English pretty much, and yours would be different.
How are you with dairy?
I'm fine with dairy. Yeah.
Because
I didn't have it 3 years, and now I eat. If I have it, I don't have milk or dairy products with a lot of lactose in it, which is what a lot of people react to. So if I have dairy, it's more likely to be like butter or cheese, for example, because that's got lower levels of lactose in it. And ideally, I would choose goat kind of products just because they've got even less and it's less likely to cause irritants. But yeah, there's a lot of people where dairy is a big, dairy and gluten can be a big factor in that.
It's something like a quarter of people, I think, have an intolerance to it.
Definitely more people who have, I guess, Asian ancestry are more likely to. So I'm just moving a little bit. Have a more likely to have dairy as an irritant in the diet. But one of the, I guess, easiest thing you can do is just take out your diet for a few weeks. If you think there's a certain food source, take out your diet for 4 weeks, reintroduce it back in, have like a food diary so you kind of feel when you do eat it, what's the energy like, when you go for a toilet, kind of what is that like? Is it diarrhea, constipation, or is it kind of good size stool?
How are you in that department?
I am good now. When I was vegan, it was definitely a lot worse.
Was it?
Yeah.
Like in what way?
I felt almost I had like IBS in that I was just having a lot of diarrhea. And there were certain times where I felt I needed to know where the nearest toilet was in an area. Not that I would always need to go to the toilet, but just in case. Fear and just, and that doesn't necessarily mean that's because of me being vegan. That could be something else, and that has other factors to do with stress and sleep. But I feel now... Do you
think that you were more stressed at that time?
I was definitely... We're just tweaking our mics. I was definitely in a job... I didn't enjoy it as much compared to now. I was more in an admin-based job, whereas now I'm more in the yoga world, and I really, really enjoy working in that because just, I guess, same as you now with jiu-jitsu, you meet a lot of interesting people who are involved in that space and have had a lot of experiences from being working in yoga that they wouldn't necessarily had otherwise than working in a normal 9-to-5 office space. So,
do you know one thing I wanted to say before I forget? You know Kyle that I had on the podcast as well, Kyle Kismet. He comes to jiu-jitsu. Yeah, like big guy, beautiful beard.
Oh yeah.
So he's really far out with his thinking and all his ideas. And I had a podcast with him and his brother. It was meant to be just him, but then his brother was there, so I just kind of hit record on my phone. Didn't even have proper mics, so the audio is a little bit sketchy, but the content was really fucking good. Beautiful. But anyway, he says that the idea is that vitamins are not necessary for the body. The thing that's more necessary is minerals. And there's something, I don't know how many minerals there are that the body needs, is something like 110 or something. And have you ever heard of Irish sea moss?
Moss?
Yeah. So it's this thing called Irish sea moss, which is grown in the Caribbean, I think. I don't know why it's called Irish sea moss, but it's got something like 92 of the minerals that the body needs.
Wow.
And then there's another plant that comes from the sea as well that's got the other minerals, and he says that he just takes these minerals and just eats a raw fruit diet.
Wow,
it's crazy. It's insane, but he's fucking fine, man. He looks great. His skin is glowing. Like,
yeah, it just shows the power of different foods can be someone's poison. Another person's like best thing ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, sea vegetables in general, especially
Like
vegan, seaweed. A lot of obviously like Japanese culture, they have a lot of like sea vegetables in diet, but a lot of that has a high amount of iodine in it, which is sometimes hard for people who are vegan, vegetarian to get. So a lot of people try and include some kind of sea vegetables, obviously seaweed being a main thing. I guess because if you eat fish and other various sources, you get it from there. But it's same, I guess, like omega-3s you get from fish, but obviously you can get it from other like more vegan sources.
Yeah.
Or I still have like a fish oil tablet that I had when I was vegan, but it's not the actual fish oil, it's the algae the fish eat. So it's kind of taking out the middle person, taking out the fish and just going from the algae, and you can get omega-3 kind of
which is the idea behind like vegetarianism or veganism, is that you're taking the middleman out of the equation and just getting the nutrients straight away. But I don't know. I'm all for people looking into their diets and adjusting them. But I would never I would never say to someone, you should be vegan, right? Unless someone was just complaining about their ill health and I could see what they were eating. I'd just say, just don't eat all your processed shit. Yeah. But I think that there's something to be said. Like, some people are hunters, you know, the hunter is like an archetypal character in mythology. It's ancient. It's so ancient. It's part of being human, you know. I have friends who are excellent hunters, and it's just who they are, you know. They really live for that. You can't tell these people not to eat meat or not to hunt. You can choose not to do it, but you can't enforce it on the rest of the world. Unless you're like a tech billionaire and you build your utopia and then you can do whatever the fuck you want.
That's a dream.
Yes. So, Charlie,
we're back.
Do you have anything that you want to plug quickly before we go?
Yeah, I just want to say that if you want to connect with me, best place at the moment is on Instagram. So I'm just at Charlie Tunmore, Tunmore. And yeah, on my Instagram page, you can find out more about my podcast, Practice of Health, and that's on all good sites. You find podcasts like Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And yeah, if you want to learn more about my health coaching and how to get involved with that, best place is to just message me on Instagram as well. So
beautiful.
Peace.
Thank you for doing this.
Thanks
I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
I love you, bro.
You too.